My name is Jennifer, 32 years old, and I never expected to discover a 5-year lie while holding a box of cold pizza. I had arrived at my father-in-law William's mansion to celebrate his 65th birthday, only to find him alone in his wheelchair. No decorations, no party. Then my husband Matthew called from Hawaii, with his mother Eleanor laughing, as they told me to have fun with the cripple. That is when William did something impossible. He stood up from his wheelchair and said words that changed everything. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button because this story of betrayal and sweet revenge is one you will not want to miss. I had been working as a nurse at Boston Memorial Hospital for 7 years when I first met Matthew Carter. He had come to visit a colleague who had undergone emergency appendectomy, and we literally bumped into each other at the coffee machine in the waiting area. He spilled his coffee all over my freshly cleaned scrubs, and instead of being annoyed, I found myself laughing at his horrified expression and frantic apologies. Matthew was handsome, successful, and despite his initial clumsiness, carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew his place in the world. Our romance happened quickly. Within 2 weeks we were dating seriously. By 3 months I was meeting his family, and after just 1 year we were standing at the altar exchanging vows. Looking back now, I realize that the whirlwind nature of our relationship left little time for me to truly understand the complex dynamics of the Carter family. The Carters were old money. They owned Carter Industries, a technology manufacturing company that had been in the family for 3 generations. William Carter had built it into a national brand before his accident, and now his son Matthew and wife Eleanor ran the business together. From the first dinner at their sprawling estate in Brookline, I could tell Eleanor Carter did not approve of me. A nurse, she had said, when Matthew introduced me, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. How practical. Eleanor was the type of woman who wore pearls to breakfast and considered anything less than a designer label to be practically rags. Her silver hair was always perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and her posture rigid with generations of privilege. In her world, her son should have married a debutante from their social circle, not a nurse whose parents were public school teachers from a middle-class neighborhood in Rhode Island. William Carter, on the other hand, had welcomed me warmly from his wheelchair. 5 years before I met Matthew, William had been in a car accident that supposedly left him paralyzed from the waist down. The family rarely discussed the details of the accident, only that it had been devastating, and had forced William into early retirement with Eleanor and Matthew taking over the company. Any woman who can put up with hospital hours, and still smile like you do, is welcome in this family. William had told me during that first dinner, reaching out to pat my hand, while his wife glared from across the table. Despite the cold reception from Eleanor, I married Matthew, and became part of the Carter family. We bought a beautiful colonial-style home just 20 minutes from the Carter estate, and I continued working at the hospital while Matthew took on more responsibilities at Carter Industries. As the months of our marriage turned into years, I found myself spending more and more time with William. Matthew was often busy with work, frequently traveling with his mother for business meetings and industry conferences. During those times, I would visit William initially out of a sense of duty to my father-in-law, but eventually because I genuinely enjoyed his company. William was surprisingly well-read for someone who had built a technology empire. We bonded over our shared love of classic literature and old films. He had an extensive library in his home, and we would spend hours discussing Jane Austen or debating the merits of Hitchcock versus Kubrick. He also shared stories from his military service before he joined the family business tales of bravery and camaraderie that always left me fascinated. "You know, Jennifer," he told me once, as we finished watching Casablanca for probably the 5th time, "you remind me of my sister Elaine. She never took any nonsense from anyone either." I had never met Elaine. According to Matthew, she had moved to Europe years ago after some family disagreement. It was strange how isolated William seemed to be from the rest of his family and friends. Eleanor managed all his medical care appointments, and even his social calendar, such that it was She claimed it was to protect him from the pitying stares of their former social circle, but something about the arrangement always struck me as controlling. Meanwhile, my own marriage was showing signs of strain. Matthew was spending less and less time at home. When he was around, he was distracted, constantly checking his phone or bringing work home. Our conversations became superficial, and our intimacy diminished. When I tried to discuss these issues, Matthew would dismiss my concerns, attributing everything to the pressures of running the family business. "You just do not understand the responsibility, Jennifer," he would say. "Someone has to ensure the company stays profitable." The business trips with Eleanor became more frequent too. Sometimes they would be gone for a week or more, leaving me to check in on William. I also began noticing financial irregularities. Despite Matthew's claims about working tirelessly for the company, our personal credit card statements showed lavish expenses that did not align with his purported business activities. Dinners at expensive restaurants when he claimed to be working late. Hotel charges in cities he had never mentioned visiting. When William's 65th birthday approached, I suggested we plan a family celebration. Nothing extravagant, just a nice dinner with a few close friends. Matthew seemed oddly disinterested. "Father does not care about birthdays anymore," he said dismissively. "Just get him a card or something." Eleanor was equally unenthusiastic. "William prefers quiet days. A big celebration would only remind him of all the things he can no longer do." Something about their response did not sit right with me. In all my conversations with William, he had never expressed such sentiments. In fact, he often reminisced fondly about parties and social gatherings from before his accident. Determined to make his birthday special, I decided to plan everything myself. I ordered his favorite cake from an exclusive bakery in Boston, bought thoughtful gifts, and even contacted a few of his old friends from the business world who still asked about him occasionally. The week before William's birthday, Matthew's behavior became even stranger. I caught him on secretive phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. One evening, I found him packing a suitcase in our bedroom. "Another business trip?" I asked, trying to keep the suspicion out of my voice. "Just a quick meeting in New York," he replied without meeting my eyes. "I will be back in a couple of days." "But what about your father's birthday? I thought we agreed to celebrate together this Friday." Matthew zipped up his suitcase with unnecessary force. "Like I said, Father does not care about birthdays. You are making a big deal out of nothing, Jennifer." As he left the next morning, I noticed he had packed far more than would be necessary for a 2-day business trip. Something was definitely wrong, and I was about to find out exactly what. Friday arrived William's birthday. I left work early, my car loaded with decorations, gifts, and the expensive cake I had special ordered. As I drove through the gates of the Carter estate, I was surprised to see no other cars in the driveway. Eleanor had a live-in housekeeper and a part-time nurse for William, but there was no sign of anyone. I rang the doorbell several times before using my spare key to enter. The grand foyer was silent and dimly lit. No decorations, no sign of any birthday preparations. "William," I called out, setting down my bags. "It is Jennifer." I found him in the living room, sitting in his wheelchair in front of the television, which was playing an old Western movie. A box of pizza sat open on the side table beside him, the contents clearly cold and barely touched. "Jennifer." His face brightened immediately upon seeing me, though confusion quickly followed. "What are you doing here with all this?" He gestured at the gift bags and decorations in my arms. "It is your birthday," I said, my own confusion growing. "Did Matthew not tell you I was planning a small celebration?" William gave a short, humorless laugh. "My son and wife left yesterday. Some urgent business in Hawaii, apparently." My heart sank. Hawaii. Matthew told me he was going to New York for 2 days. An uncomfortable silence fell between us. I set down the cake and decorations, trying to process this information. Matthew had lied to me about where he was going, and more importantly, he and Eleanor had left William alone on his birthday. "Let me try calling him," I said, pulling out my phone. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again with the same result. "They will not answer," William said with resignation in his voice. Eleanor mentioned something about poor reception at the resort. The resort. Not a business meeting venue, but a resort. The deception was becoming clearer by the minute. "William, I am so sorry," I said, fighting back tears of anger and disappointment. I had no idea they were planning this. He shrugged, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. "It is not your fault, Jennifer. To be honest, I am used to their behavior by now." Determined not to let their actions ruin his birthday completely, I started unpacking the decorations. I hung streamers around the living room, set up a small table with the cake, and arranged his presents. William watched me with a mixture of amusement and appreciation. "You did not have to go to all this trouble," he said, as I lit the candles on the cake. "Of course I did. 65 is a milestone birthday. Now make a wish." Just as William was about to blow out the candles, my phone rang. It was a video call from Matthew's number. Relief washed over me. Perhaps there was a reasonable explanation after all. "Matthew," I answered quickly. "Where are you?" "We are celebrating your father's birthday." But it was not Matthew's face that appeared on the screen. It was Eleanor, her skin tanned, and her hair styled in a way I had never seen before. Behind her was a stunning view of a beach at sunset, palm trees swaying in the breeze. "Jennifer." She looked surprised and slightly annoyed. "What are you doing at the house?" Before I could answer, Matthew's face appeared beside his mother's, Tui's. He was clearly intoxicated, his eyes unfocused, and a tropical drink in his hand. "Oh, hey babe," he slurred. "Surprise. We are in Maui." The scene shifted as Eleanor adjusted the camera, revealing a luxurious beachfront suite with champagne bottles and room service trays scattered about. "I thought you were in New York," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "For business." Eleanor gave a dismissive wave. "We decided to combine business with pleasure. There is a technology conference here next week." "Next week," I repeated. "But today is William's birthday. We were supposed to celebrate together." Matthew's expression changed from drunken happiness to irritation. "I told you father does not care about birthdays anymore. You are so stubborn sometimes, Jennifer." Eleanor nudged her son and gave a theatrical whisper that was clearly meant for me to hear. "She is playing the faithful little wife, looking after your father while we are gone. So predictable." They both laughed, and I felt a cold anger building inside me. I turned the phone so they could see William in his wheelchair beside me with the birthday decorations in the background. "Oh, look! William is there too," Eleanor exclaimed with false cheer. "How are you doing, darling? Is Jennifer taking good care of you?" William said nothing, his face hardening as he watched the exchange. Matthew took another swig of his drink. "You two having fun with the cold pizza? Sorry we could not be there, but someone has to handle the real work in this family. Right, Mom?" Eleanor laughed again, a high, brittle sound that set my teeth on edge. Absolutely better than babysitting duty anyway. She leaned closer to the camera, her voice dropping to a stage whisper. "Have fun with the cripple, Jennifer. We will bring you back a souvenir." I gasped at the cruelty of her words. Tears sprang to my eyes, not just from sadness, but from pure, undiluted rage. I looked at Matthew, waiting for him to defend his father, to chastise his mother for such a heartless comment. But he just laughed along with her, raising his glass in a mock toast. In that moment, I realized I did not know the man I had married at all. This was not the Matthew who had apologized profusely over spilled coffee, who had sent flowers to my workplace every week during our courtship, who had promised to love and cherish me until death parted us. This was a stranger wearing my husband's face. Eleanor must have noticed the tears streaming down my face, because her laughter abruptly stopped. "Oh, come now, Jennifer, do not be so sensitive. We are just having a bit of fun." "Fun," I choked out. "You abandoned your husband on his birthday to go to Hawaii, and you think it is fun to call him a cripple." "I think we should go," Matthew muttered suddenly. looking uncomfortable. Dinner reservation and all that. Of course, Eleanor agreed quickly. Enjoy the birthday, William. Jennifer, do try to lighten up. The call ended, leaving me staring at a blank screen, tears still flowing freely down my face. I could not look at William, ashamed of what my husband and his mother had just said. Jennifer, William said softly. Look at me. I wiped my tears and turned to face him, prepared to offer more apologies for my husband's inexcusable behavior. But what I saw made the words die in my throat. William Carter was standing up. After 5 years of supposedly being paralyzed from the waist down, my father-in-law was standing on his own 2 feet in front of me. William, I whispered, certain I was hallucinating. I think we need to talk, Jennifer, he said, his voice stronger and more resolute than I had ever heard it. He took a few tentative steps, moving like someone who was out of practice rather than physically incapable. He lowered himself into an armchair across from me, leaving the wheelchair behind. You can walk, I stated the obvious, my mind struggling to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. How long? William sighed deeply, running a hand through his silver hair. I was never truly paralyzed. Not the way they told you. My world tilted on its axis. 5 years of deception. 5 years of everyone in the Carter family perpetuating a lie that I had never thought to question. The accident was real, William continued. I did suffer injuries, including damage to my spine. But the doctors said from the beginning that with physical therapy I would likely make a full recovery within 6 to 8 months. Then why, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why pretend to be paralyzed for 5 years? William's expression darkened. It was Eleanor's idea. Our marriage had been struggling for years before the accident. We were discreetly discussing divorce terms when the accident happened. When the doctors said I would recover, Eleanor saw an opportunity. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. She came to me in the hospital with a proposition. If I agreed to pretend the paralysis was permanent, she would ensure I received the best care and could live comfortably in our home. In return, she and Matthew would take over control of Carter Industries. And you agreed to this. I could not keep the incredulity from my voice. At the time, it seemed convenient. Our marriage was already over in all but name. I was tired, Jennifer. Tired of fighting with Eleanor. Tired of the constant power struggles. The accident gave me a reason to step back from everything. I told myself it would be temporary, just until I figured out what I wanted for the next chapter of my life. He looked down at his hands, but weeks turned into months, and months into years. Eleanor managed everything. My medical records, my care, my public image. Few people were allowed to visit me, and those who did saw exactly what she wanted them to see. A broken man dependent on his devoted wife. The full weight of this deception was still sinking in, but surely someone knew, doctors, therapists, all carefully selected and well paid for their discretion, William explained. Eleanor made sure of that. She claimed it was to protect the family from scandal and the company from instability, but really, it was about control. Control of me, control of the company, control of our family legacy. A thought struck me. Does Matthew know? Has he known all along? William nodded slowly. Yes. At first he objected, but Eleanor has always known how to manipulate our son. She convinced him it was for the best that the company would suffer if investors knew I could potentially return. And then, of course, there were the financial incentives. Financial incentives. Insurance payouts. Tax benefits for caring for a disabled family member, sympathy from business associates that translated into favorable deals. William's voice was bitter now. Not to mention the freedom it gave them to run the company however they wanted, without my interference. I thought about all the times I had helped William into his wheelchair, all the careful accommodations I had made in our home when he visited, all the genuine concern I had felt for his condition. 5 years of elaborate deception, and for what? Why tell me now? I asked. Why show me the truth? William's eyes softened. Because you are the only person in this family who has shown me genuine kindness with no ulterior motive. You read to me, Jennifer. You watch old movies with me. You remembered my birthday when my own son and wife conveniently forgot, and after seeing how they treated you on that call, how they spoke about me, it was time for the charade to end. The betrayal cut deep, not just for me, but for William as well. I could see years of resentment and pain etched in the lines of his face. All this time you could have walked away, I said. Why stay? Fear at first, he admitted. Fear of Eleanor's retaliation. She threatened to destroy my reputation to claim I had faked the paralysis for insurance money if I ever revealed the truth. Later, it was just easier to maintain the lie than to face the consequences of the truth. I became isolated, depressed. The wheelchair became both my prison and my shield. He looked at me directly, his eyes clear and determined. But seeing you treated this way, hearing them mock both of us so cruelly, something snapped, Jennifer. I cannot do this anymore. I will not do this anymore. In the silence that followed his declaration, I tried to process everything. My husband and mother-in-law had gone to Hawaii without telling me, abandoned William on his birthday, mocked us both callously, and now I discovered that William's paralysis, which had shaped so much of our family dynamic, was a 5-year deception that everyone but me had known about. There is more, William said quietly. Things about the company, about Matthew and Eleanor's activities that you should know. I steeled myself for whatever additional revelations were coming. Tell me everything. For the next hour, William filled in the blanks of a puzzle I had not even known existed. The picture that emerged was uglier than I could have imagined. Beyond the fake paralysis, there were layers of financial impropriety, emotional manipulation, and outright fraud. They have been using my supposed disability for everything from tax write-offs to gaining sympathy in business negotiations, William explained. The insurance payout alone was several $1,000,000, based on the premise that I would never walk again. I paced the living room, alternating between fury and heartbreak. So, our entire marriage has been built on lies. Matthew pretended to be this devoted son caring for his disabled father, when in reality, he was complicit in keeping you prisoner in your own home, while he and Eleanor looted the company. I would not say looted exactly, William clarified. They have kept the business profitable, but they have certainly diverted substantial funds for their personal use. Those business trips, many of them are actually vacations charged to the company as business expenses. This aligned with the financial inconsistencies I had noticed. And the company board. Do they know? William shook his head. The board has been systematically sidelined. Eleanor replaced most of the independent directors with friends and relatives who would not question her decisions. The remaining few are kept in the dark about most operations. I collapsed onto the sofa, my mind reeling. I feel like such a fool. All those times I defended Matthew when my friends questioned why he traveled so much without me. All those nights I spent alone, thinking he was working hard for our future. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Stephanie. How is the birthday celebration going? Did Matthew make it back from New York? I need to call Stephanie, I told William. She has been warning me about Matthew for months, and I dismissed her concerns. William nodded. Of course. I understand you need support right now. I stepped into the hallway to make the call, and as expected, Stephanie was outraged on my behalf. Those manipulative snakes, she exclaimed after I explained the situation. Jennifer, you need to get out of that marriage immediately. This is beyond salvageable. I know I admitted the words, bringing both pain and strange relief. But I cannot just leave William to deal with this alone. They have been taking advantage of him for years. Then help him, Stephanie said simply. Help each other. But protect yourself first, okay? Financially and legally. After ending the call, I returned to the living room where William was examining old family photos on the mantelpiece. I never noticed before, I said. But there are so many signs I missed. The way Eleanor always answered medical questions for you. How Matthew changed the subject whenever I suggested getting you a second opinion or trying new therapies. Even your supposed caregiver, Nancy, only came when I was not around. William nodded. Eleanor orchestrated everything perfectly. Nancy is actually her cousin's daughter who needed a job. She has no medical training whatsoever. And the way your old business associates stopped visiting. Eleanor told me it was because you requested privacy during your recovery. In reality, she systematically cut me off from anyone who might have influenced me to fight back, William said bitterly. She even kept my brother Robert away by telling him I was too depressed to see family. As we continued talking, more pieces fell into place. The strange comments from family friends about William's condition, improving when medical reports claimed he would never recover. The way Eleanor controlled access to all financial documents related to William's care. Matthew's inexplicable anger whenever I suggested taking William on outings beyond the estate grounds. There is something else you should know, William said, his expression grave. About Matthew's business trips. I braced myself. He has been having affairs, hasn't he? William looked surprised. You knew? I suspected, I admitted. The late-night calls he would take in another room. Hotel charges in cities he claimed not to visit. Perfume that wasn't mine. I just did not want to believe it. I am sorry, Jennifer. For what it is worth, I believe Eleanor encouraged this behavior. She never thought you were good enough for him, and probably hoped the marriages would fail. I laughed without humor. Well, she is getting her wish. We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the enormity of the betrayal we had experienced. Then William straightened in his chair, a determined look crossing his face. The question now is, what do we do about it? Do we confront them? Do we simply walk away? What do you want, Jennifer? I considered the options. Walking away quietly would be easiest. I could file for divorce, move on with my life, and leave the Carter family drama behind. But that would mean abandoning William, who had been as much a victim as I had. It would also mean Matthew and Eleanor would face no consequences for their actions. I want them to face what they have done, I said finally. Not just to me, but to you. I want them to understand that they cannot treat people this way without consequences. William smiled, and for the first time I saw a glimpse of the formidable businessman he must have been before all this began. I was hoping you would say that, he replied. Because I have a plan. But I cannot do it alone. Tell me, I said, my resolve hardening. How do we make them pay? We spent the remainder of William's birthday, not in celebration, but in strategic planning. William ordered proper food to replace the cold pizza, and over a dinner that should have included his son and wife, we began plotting our response to years of deception. First things first, William said, setting down his fork. I need to show you what I am actually capable of physically. He stood and walked around the dining room with surprising steadiness. I exercise when no one is around. Not physical therapy exactly, but enough to maintain basic strength. Eleanor and Matthew believe I only exercise my upper body for independence in the wheelchair, but I have been doing much more. To demonstrate, he did a series of squats and even a few push-ups against the wall. His movements were those of a man in his 60s who was moderately active, not someone who had been wheelchair-bound for 5 years. That is incredible, I said. They have no idea you can do all this. None. The only time I use the wheelchair legitimately is when I am truly fatigued, which happens more often than I would like at my age. But the paralysis. Complete fiction. After dinner, William took me to his study, a room I had visited many times before, but now saw with new eyes. He unlocked a hidden compartment in his desk and removed a folder of documents. My first step was to contact my lawyer, Daniel Rogers. He is the only person outside this house who knows the truth. I have been documenting everything for the past 2 years, ever since I began to realize this situation might never end unless I took action. The folder contained medical records, showing his actual recovery timeline bank statements, highlighting suspicious transfers and notes, detailing conversations he had overheard between Matthew and Eleanor. "We need more," I said, scanning the documents, "especially about the company finances and the insurance fraud." William agreed. "Daniel has been discreetly gathering information, but we need to move carefully. Eleanor has spies everywhere, including among the household staff." Over the next several days, while Matthew and Eleanor enjoyed their Hawaiian vacation, William and I implemented our plan. I took a week of personal leave from the hospital, telling my supervisor I needed time to deal with family issues, which was certainly true. Step 1 was gathering more evidence. William gave me access to his private email account, which Eleanor did not know existed, and showed me where he had been storing records of their financial misdeeds. "The insurance fraud is the most serious," he explained, as we compiled documents. "They collected millions based on medical reports that Eleanor essentially fabricated with the help of a corrupt doctor." "Dr. Thompson," I guessed, recalling the physician, who always seemed uncomfortable around me. "Exactly. Eleanor paid him handsomely to document my condition as permanent and degenerative. The insurance company never questioned it because Eleanor made sure I was too heavily medicated during their home evaluations to communicate effectively." The more we uncovered, the more outraged I became. This went beyond a dysfunctional family dynamic or a troubled marriage. This was systematic abuse and fraud. While William focused on the business and legal aspects, I tackled the personal betrayal. Using the access I had to our shared accounts, I downloaded evidence of Matthew's affairs. Credit card statements showing romantic dinners for two in cities where he was supposedly alone on business. Hotel receipts with spa services for couples. Even emails to Eleanor discussing his extramarital activities that he had foolishly left accessible on our shared home computer. "Your son is not very discreet," I told William with a bitter laugh, as I added another damning document to our growing collection. "Matthew always had a sense of entitlement," William replied. "He never believed consequences would apply to him." By the third day, we had compiled enough evidence to bury both Matthew and Eleanor legally, but we needed to plan the confrontation carefully. William called Daniel to discuss the legal strategy. "The key is timing," Daniel advised over speakerphone. "We need to confront them in a controlled environment where they cannot simply walk away or call security to remove you, Jennifer." "The house," William suggested. "When they return from Hawaii, they will not expect me to have allies here." Daniel agreed. "I can have the necessary legal documents prepared by then. Preliminary divorce papers for Jennifer, paperwork to reclaim your position as CEO, and evidence of the fraud ready to submit to authorities if needed." We also needed witnesses, people who would support William's version of events and prevent Eleanor from spinning a new narrative. My brother Robert, William suggested. "Eleanor has kept him away by claiming I was too fragile for visitors, but he has been trying to see me for years. He never believed the extent of my disability." "And we need to notify the board members who are not in Eleanor's pocket," I added. "They deserve to know how the company has been mismanaged." William hesitated. "That is risky. Eleanor has deep relationships with most of the board." "But not all of them," I pointed out. "You mentioned Sophia Winters, and Gregory Patel still ask about you regularly. They might be allies." William considered this. "You are right. I will have Daniel contact them discreetly." As our plan took shape, I also focused on my personal preparations. I contacted a divorce attorney recommended by Stephanie, moved my personal savings to a new account Matthew could not access, and began looking for an apartment to rent once the confrontation was over. "You could stay here," William offered when I mentioned apartment hunting. "This house has plenty of room, and frankly I could use the company." The offer was tempting. Despite everything, I had grown fond of William, and the thought of having a safe place to land after my marriage imploded was appealing. But I needed independence. "Thank you, but I think I need to stand on my own," I told him. "But I will visit often, I promise." We also prepared the physical space for the confrontation. William suggested using the formal living room where the family often held business meetings. "We will set up cameras," he said. "Eleanor is an expert at twisting narratives later. We need indisputable evidence of their reactions when they see me standing." The plan was coming together, but as the day of Matthew and Eleanor's return approached, my anxiety increased. What if they somehow discovered our preparations? What if Eleanor had more allies than we realized? What if Matthew managed to convince me that everything was a misunderstanding? "I am scared," I admitted to William the night before their scheduled return. Not of them exactly, but of my own resolve. I loved Matthew once. Part of me still wants to believe there is an explanation. William squeezed my hand reassuringly. "That is your kindness speaking, Jennifer. It is what makes you different from them. But remember what you saw on that video call. Remember the cruelty in their laughter. People who can speak that way about their own family members are not people who deserve your benefit of the doubt." He was right, of course. The Matthew I had loved was a carefully constructed facade. The real Matthew had revealed himself in that video call, and that was the man I would be confronting tomorrow. "Get some rest," William advised. "Tomorrow will be challenging for both of us." As I settled into the guest room that night, I thought about how dramatically my life had changed in just 1 week. I had arrived at this house, expecting to celebrate a birthday. Instead, I was preparing for a confrontation that would end my marriage and potentially send my mother-in-law to prison. But beneath the anxiety and sadness was a growing sense of determination. William and I had been manipulated and betrayed by the people who should have loved us most. Tomorrow we would reclaim our power and our dignity. And they would never see it coming. The morning of Matthew and Eleanor's return dawned bright and clear, a beautiful New England spring day that belied the storm brewing within the Carter mansion. William and I had been up since 6 making final preparations. The cameras were hidden but recording. The documents were organized and ready. William had even arranged for a small security team, former military colleagues he trusted to be stationed discreetly around the property, in case things got ugly. "How are you feeling?" I asked William, as we sat in the kitchen, neither of us touching the breakfast the housekeeper had prepared. "Nervous," he admitted, "but also free. Even if nothing else comes of today, I am done pretending. I am done living in that chair." I understood completely. Despite my anxiety about confronting Matthew, I felt similarly liberated. The weight of suspicion and doubt I had been carrying for months had been replaced by clarity and purpose. At 10:30, the security system alerted us to a car entering the property. Matthew and Eleanor had returned from Hawaii. William quickly moved to his wheelchair, positioning himself in the living room as we had planned. I waited in the adjacent study, out of sight, but able to hear everything. The front door opened, and I heard Eleanor's voice first. "William, darling, we are home." Her tone was falsely cheerful, the voice she used for public appearances. "We brought you some lovely Hawaiian souvenirs." There was rustling of bags, the sound of luggage being deposited in the foyer, then Matthew's voice sounding tired but relaxed. "Hey, Dad. Sorry we missed your birthday. Business, you know how it is." The casual dismissal of their deliberate abandonment made my blood boil, but I remained in position, waiting for the right moment. "Did Jennifer come by?" Eleanor asked, her voice now closer to the living room. The housekeeper mentioned something about decorations. "Yes, she did," William replied, his voice giving away nothing of what was to come. "She was quite disappointed you both were in Hawaii instead of New York, as Matthew had claimed." A brief silence followed. "Well, plans changed last minute," Matthew said dismissively. "Business opportunity in Maui. Could not pass it up." "I see," William said. "And this business opportunity required tropical drinks and mocking your wife and your disabled father on video call." Another silence, this one longer and heavier. "You are making too much of this," Eleanor said, finally, her tone sharpening. "It was just a bit of harmless fun. Jennifer is too sensitive." "Is she?" William asked. Or perhaps she simply expects basic decency from her husband and his mother. Look, Dad, Matthew interjected. If this is about missing your birthday, we can celebrate now. We brought gifts, see? I heard the rustle of shopping bags again. This is not about gifts, Matthew Williams said quietly. This is about respect, honesty, family, concepts that seem to have little meaning to either of you. What is that supposed to mean? Eleanor's voice had turned defensive. That was my cue. I stepped out of the study and into the living room. Matthew and Eleanor both turned startled by my appearance. Jennifer, Matthew exclaimed. What are you doing here? Waiting for you, I replied coldly. Both of you. Eleanor recovered quickly, her surprise morphing into irritation. This is a family matter, Jennifer. Perhaps you should go home and let us discuss this privately. I am family, I reminded her, at least for now. Matthew looked between his father and me, confusion, giving way to wariness. What is going on here? Why do I feel like I am walking into an ambush? Because you are, William said simply. And then, with deliberate slowness, William Carter stood up from his wheelchair. Eleanor screamed. Not a small, startled sound, but a full-throated scream of shock and horror. She staggered backward, nearly falling into an armchair. Matthew's reaction was different. His face drained of color, and he stood frozen, his mouth, opening and closing, without sound, like a fish out of water. Surprise, William, said his voice steady and powerful. The cripple can walk. This is impossible, Eleanor whispered, her perfectly manicured hand clutching at her throat. You are paralyzed, the doctor said. The doctors said what you paid them to say, William corrected her. I recovered from my injuries years ago, as you well know. The paralysis was a convenient fiction that served your purposes. Dad, I do not understand, Matthew began, finding his voice at last. Are you saying you have been able to walk all this time? That you have been lying to us? The audacity of this attempt to flip the narrative made me laugh out loud. He has been lying to you. That is rich, coming from the man who told his wife he was going to New York for business when he was actually flying to Hawaii with his mother. William took a few steps forward, causing Eleanor to press herself deeper into the armchair. Let us be perfectly clear about who has been lying to whom. You both knew I was recovering from my injuries 5 years ago. You, Eleanor, proposed this arrangement. Pretend to be permanently disabled. Let you and Matthew take over the company, and in return, you would ensure I was comfortable in my declining years. It was for your own good, Eleanor protested weakly. You were in no condition to run the company after the accident. The stress would have killed you. Perhaps, William acknowledged, but that decision should have been mine to make. Instead, you exploited my vulnerability, isolated me from friends and family, and used my supposed disability for your own financial gain. He turned to Matthew. And you, my son, you went along with all of it. You watched your mother manipulate and control me, and you said nothing, did nothing, because it benefited you too. Matthew's expression shifted from shock to calculation. I could almost see him searching for a way to salvage the situation. Dad, whatever Mom told you to do, I was not part of that decision. I was just following her lead, thinking it was what you wanted. Eleanor's head snapped toward her son. Matthew, do not you dare try to blame this all on me. You were happy enough with the arrangement when it meant you became executive vice president at 31. And just like that, they turned on each other exactly as William had predicted they would under pressure. Enough, William's voice cut through their bickering. I have documentation of everything. The falsified medical reports, the insurance fraud, the misappropriation of company funds for your personal expenses, including this little Hawaiian vacation. On cue, the doorbell rang. Robert Williams' brother entered the room, accompanied by Daniel the lawyer and 2 members of the company board, who had remained loyal to William over the years. William Robert rushed forward, embracing his brother with tears in his eyes. My God, you really can walk. Eleanor told me you were too unwell for visitors all these years. Another of her many lies, William said, returning the embrace. It is good to see you, Robert. Eleanor's eyes darted between the newcomers, the calculating look of a cornered animal assessing escape routes. This is a private family matter. You have no right to bring outsiders into it. These outsiders, as you call them, are here to witness my official return as CEO of Carter Industries, William replied, nodding to Daniel, who opened his briefcase and removed a stack of legal documents. You cannot do that, Eleanor protested. The board would never allow it. Sophia Winters, one of the board members present, stepped forward. Actually, Eleanor, the board has already held an emergency session this morning. Upon reviewing the evidence William provided, we have voted unanimously to reinstate him and to launch a full investigation into the company's finances during your tenure as acting CEO. Matthew, seeing the walls closing in, made one last desperate attempt to separate himself from his mother's schemes. Dad, you have to believe me. I did not know the extent of what was happening. Mom handled all the medical and insurance matters. I was just trying to help run the company the way you would have wanted. I could not contain myself any longer. Stop lying, Matthew. I have seen the emails between you and your mother discussing how to keep William isolated. I have documentation of how you both diverted company funds for personal use. I even have evidence of your affairs during your supposed business trips. The color drained from Matthew's face again. You went through my emails. You had no right. Just as you had no right to betray and mock the woman who loved you, William said quietly. Jennifer has been the only person in this house who showed me genuine kindness and respect. And how did you repay her loyalty? With lies, infidelity, and cruel mockery. Daniel stepped forward, handing me a document. Mrs. Carter, these are the preliminary divorce papers you requested. Everything is in order as we discussed. I took the papers and held them out to Matthew. Consider yourself served. Matthew stared at the documents but made no move to take them. You cannot be serious. We can work this out, Jennifer. It was just a stupid joke on the video call. I was drunk, not thinking clearly. It was not just the call, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. It was the lies, the affairs, the way you and your mother treated your father, the way you treated me. Our marriage has been a sham from the beginning, Matthew. I just did not realize it until now. Eleanor, seeing her carefully constructed world collapsing around her, made one last desperate play. If you do this, William, I will destroy you. I will tell everyone you faked your disability for the insurance money. Your reputation will be ruined. William laughed, a genuine sound of amusement that seemed to startle everyone in the room. By all means, Eleanor, tell people I faked my disability. Then explain why you, as my primary caregiver and medical proxy, never reported this miraculous recovery to the insurance company or the doctors. Explain why you continued to collect benefits and tax advantages for caring for a disabled spouse who was not actually disabled. He gestured to Daniel. My lawyer has already prepared a full statement detailing how you coerced me into maintaining this charade through emotional manipulation and threats. Who do you think people will believe? The victim coming forward, or the woman who has been defrauding insurance companies and manipulating company finances for personal gain? Eleanor's face contorted with rage, but for once she seemed to have no words. William turned to Sophia and Gregory from the board. I believe we have a company meeting to attend. I think it is time Carter Industries had a change in leadership. Do not you? As they prepared to leave, William paused beside me. Will you be all right here? I nodded. I need to finish this with Matthew, privately. William squeezed my shoulder supportively before leaving with the others, leaving me alone with my soon-to-be ex-husband. Matthew looked like a stranger to me now. The handsome, confident man I had fallen in love with had been replaced by someone desperate and pathetic. So that is it, he asked bitterly. 5 years of marriage thrown away because of one stupid video call. You know it is not just about the call, I replied. It is about who you really are, Matthew. someone who would participate in isolating and manipulating his own father, someone who would lie repeatedly to his wife, someone who would cheat without remorse. I made mistakes, he admitted, his tone suggesting this was a major concession. But everyone does. We can go to counseling, work through this. I shook my head. There is nothing to work through. Our marriage was built on lies from the beginning. You never let me see the real you until that video call. And now that I have seen it, I cannot unsee it. I placed the divorce papers on the coffee table between us. My attorney will contact yours. I will be moving out today. Most of my things are already packed. Matthew's facade finally cracked completely, his expression turning ugly with anger. You will regret this, Jennifer. You think my father will protect you. He is a sick old man who has been sitting in a wheelchair feeling sorry for himself for 5 years. He cannot run that company again. He already is running it, I corrected him. And he has more integrity and strength in his little finger than you have in your entire body. Goodbye, Matthew. I turned to leave, but his next words stopped me cold. You will get nothing in the divorce. Nothing. The prenup makes sure of that. I looked back at him one last time. I never wanted your money, Matthew. I just wanted a husband who loved and respected me. Clearly that was too much to ask. And with that, I walked out of the Carter mansion, leaving behind a marriage built on deception, and a man I now realized I had never truly known. The weeks following the confrontation were a whirlwind of legal meetings, media speculation, and personal adjustments. As predicted, the revelation of Eleanor and Matthew's deception created shockwaves through Boston's business and social circles. Carter Industries issued a press release announcing Williams' return as CEO, attributing his absence to medical issues that have now resolved. The carefully worded statement gave no details about the wheelchair deception, but rumors spread nonetheless. I moved into a modest one-bedroom apartment near the hospital where I worked. After years in the spacious Carter family home, the smaller space felt refreshingly manageable, and more importantly, entirely mine. No deception, no walking on eggshells, just a clean, quiet space where I could begin to rebuild my life. William called regularly to check on me and to update me on the company situation. True to his word, he had taken immediate control of Carter Industries with Sophia and Gregory's full support. Eleanor had been removed from all company positions, and Matthew had been placed on administrative leave, pending a full investigation. The board wants to fire him outright, William told me during one of our calls. But I suggested the leave first to give him a chance to resign voluntarily and avoid further scandal. That is more consideration than he showed you, I pointed out. Perhaps William acknowledged, but he is still my son despite everything. I cannot completely shut that door, even now. The legal consequences unfolded gradually. The insurance company launched a fraud investigation once they were notified about William's actual condition. Eleanor faced the most serious potential charges as she had been the one who primarily dealt with the insurance claims and medical documentation. Matthew's involvement was less direct, but still significant, particularly regarding the misuse of company funds. My divorce proceedings moved forward with surprising smoothness. Despite Matthew's threats, the prenuptial agreement actually worked in my favor in some ways. It ensured a clean break with neither of us having claims on assets acquired before the marriage. I wanted nothing from the Carter family fortune, just my freedom and a chance to start over. William insisted on helping me financially, despite my protests. Consider it compensation for the nursing services you provided, he joked. You were the only one who actually cared for me as a person, not as a pawn in some twisted game. While the legal matters progressed, William focused on his physical recovery. After 5 years of limited activity, his stamina and strength needed significant improvement. He hired a legitimate physical therapist this time, and worked diligently to regain his former fitness. The doctor says I am doing remarkably well for someone my age, he told me proudly during one of our weekly dinners. Apparently all those secret exercises I did when Eleanor was out of the house paid off. I had worried that our friendship might fade once the crisis that brought us together had passed, but if anything, it grew stronger. William became the father figure I had lost when my own dad passed away years earlier, and I became the supportive daughter he had never had. 6 months after the confrontation, my divorce from Matthew was finalized. I celebrated with a small gathering at my apartment with Stephanie, a few colleagues from the hospital, and William in attendance. To new beginnings, Stephanie toasted, raising her glass of champagne. And to finding out who your real friends are. We all clinked glasses, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely happy. The betrayal still hurt when I allowed myself to think about it, but those moments were becoming less frequent and less painful. My career at the hospital flourished during this period. Without the distractions of my troubled marriage, I was able to focus more fully on my nursing work and even accepted a promotion to head nurse in the cardiology department. The increased responsibilities and salary came at the perfect time, giving me both professional satisfaction and greater financial independence. William's recovery was equally impressive. Under his leadership, Carter Industries stabilized after the initial shock of the management change. He implemented new corporate governance policies to prevent the kind of financial mismanagement that had occurred under Eleanor and Matthew's watch. Several board members who had been too closely aligned with Eleanor were replaced with more independent directors. As for Eleanor and Matthew themselves, their fall from grace was swift and brutal. Eleanor, facing multiple fraud charges, eventually accepted a plea deal that included substantial financial penalties and 2 years of house arrest. She sold her personal properties to cover the legal costs and restitution, moving into a much smaller condo outside the city. Matthew avoided criminal charges, but was forced to resign from Carter Industries when the investigation revealed the extent of his misuse of company resources. Last I heard, he had moved to Chicago to work for a former business associate, his reputation in Boston too damaged to salvage. 1 year after William's birthday, that had changed everything. He invited me to dinner at his home. The mansion looked different now. Brighter somehow, with new artwork on the walls and the stuffy formal furniture replaced with more comfortable modern pieces. I wanted to mark the occasion, William explained, as we sat down to a meal prepared by his new chef. 1 year of freedom, for both of us. It is hard to believe so much has changed, I said, looking around at the transformed space. Sometimes I still expect to see you in that wheelchair when I visit. William laughed. I had it donated to a medical supply charity. Good riddance. After dinner, we moved to the living room where I noticed a small gift box on the coffee table. What is this? I asked, as William handed it to me. Just a small token of appreciation, he said, for everything you did last year, for being the catalyst that finally gave me the courage to stand up literally and figuratively. Inside the box was a beautiful silver bracelet with a single charm, a small key. The key symbolizes freedom, William explained, something you helped me reclaim. Tears welled in my eyes. I should be thanking you. If not for that horrible video call and your revelation afterward, I might still be married to Matthew, blind to who he really was. Then I suppose we saved each other, William said with a gentle smile. As the evening wound down, we discussed the future. William mentioned his plans to gradually transition leadership of the company to trusted executives over the next few years, with an eye toward eventual retirement. Not to a wheelchair this time, he joked. I am thinking more along the lines of a beach house in Florida, somewhere I can walk on the sand every morning. That sounds wonderful, I said sincerely. And you? He asked. What does your future hold, Jennifer? I thought about the nursing school application I had recently submitted, my goal of becoming a nurse practitioner finally seeming within reach. I thought about the coffee date I had agreed to with a kind doctor from the pediatric department, small steps toward a new life but meaningful ones. I am still figuring it out, I replied honestly. But for the first time in a long time, I am excited about the possibilities. Later that night, as I drove back to my apartment, I reflected on everything that had transpired since that fateful birthday celebration. The betrayal had been devastating, the confrontation terrifying, and the aftermath challenging. But through it all, I had discovered a strength within myself I had not known existed. I had learned that sometimes the most important people in your life are not those connected to you by marriage or romantic love, but those who show you genuine respect and kindness. William had become family to me in a way that Matthew, despite our vows, never truly was. Most importantly, I had learned that it is never too late to stand up for yourself. William had done it literally after 5 years in a wheelchair. I had done it by walking away from a marriage that diminished rather than enhanced my life. Both acts required courage, but the freedom on the other side was worth every moment of fear and uncertainty. Have you ever had to stand up to someone who betrayed your trust? How did you find the strength to confront them? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this tale of betrayal and redemption resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of overcoming life's greatest challenges. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply standing up and walking away from what hurts you.